Hi, there's a blood test that most people have never heard of, and it doesn't get the attention that blood pressure gets, or heart rate, or even a temperature test, and you will not see this ever on a fitness watch. But in sepsis, it can tell you something that none of those other numbers can, and it's called lactate. And the reason I'm making this video is simple. Lactate is one of the tests that can reveal how serious sepsis really is, sometimes before the patient even looks that ill. And it's fast, and it's cheap, and it's often the difference between catching sepsis in time and missing it completely. So in this video, I'm going to explain what lactate actually is, and what the numbers mean, how it's measured, and why it matters so much. No jargon, just things I wish I'd known and had explained to me before sepsis nearly took my life. Let me explain what lactate is in the simplest way I can. Every cell in your body needs energy. Normally your cells make that energy using oxygen. Oxygen comes in, energy is produced, and everything runs smoothly. That's the system that the body prefers. But what happens when oxygen runs short? When the blood supply is failing and your tissues are not getting the oxygen they need, your cells do not just give up, they switch to a backup system, a way of making energy without using oxygen. And that backup system keeps you going for a while, but it produces a byproduct, a waste chemical that builds up in your blood, and that chemical is lactate. So here is the key idea, the one thing that to hold on to. When lactate rises in blood, it's a signal. It's your body telling you that something, somewhere, your tissues are starving and they're not getting enough oxygen. And in sepsis, that is exactly what happens. So lactate tells us when tissues are starved of oxygen, but how high is too high? Let me try and give you the numbers because they are worth knowing. Lactate is measured in millimoles per litre. Under 2 is the normal range, and that's where most healthy people sit. Between 2 and 4, that's kind of like a warning zone. Something's not quite right. It doesn't tell you exactly what it is, but it tells you to look a bit harder. And over 4, that's kind of really important because in sepsis, a lactate of over 4 strongly links to a higher risk of dying. And it's one of the clearest warning signs we have that a patient is critically unwell. That's why, in an emergency, a high lactate makes everything move faster. It's a number that changes how seriously the whole team takes the situation. A lactate of over 4 says this person's in real trouble and we need to act now. Now I need to be careful and honest here, because this is where a lot of people get it wrong, and getting it wrong matters. A raised lactate on its own does not automatically mean septic shock. Lactate can rise for other reasons too. Liver problems can push it up. Certain medications can push it up. Even very hard exercise raises it for a while. So the number has to be read alongside the whole picture, with blood pressure, the other warning signs, the person in front of you, how they actually look. One number in isolation never tells the full story. But this is the part that matters. In someone who has an infection, and who is getting sicker that climbing lactate is a red flag that should never be ignored. In that context, it's one of the most important early warning signs that we have. The skill is reading it correctly, not panicking over it alone, but never ever dismissing it. Here's something that genuinely matters when you understand it. Lactate is quick and it's cheap to measure. It's usually taken from a small blood sample, often through a test called a blood gas. In many hospitals, the results come back in a few minutes, not hours, minutes. Think about what this means. It's very little cost, and in that time it takes to make a cup of tea, the hospital can get that number and tell you how starved of oxygen your tissues are. When you think about it, that's an extraordinary amount of information, very fast for very little money. And that is exactly why it's so frustrating when it's not done on time. This is not an expensive scan that needs booking. It's not a test that takes days. It's one of the fastest, cheapest and most useful checks in the whole of emergency medicine. And there is rarely a good reason not to do it when sepsis is suspected. So if lactate is this useful, where does it fit in actually treating the patient? Well, let me show you that. In the UK, there's a framework called Sepsis 6. It's the 6 actions that should happen within the first hour of suspected sepsis. Give oxygen, take blood cultures, give antibiotics, give fluids, measure urine output, and measure lactate. Lactate is one of the 6, not an optional extra. One of the 6 things that should happen within that first critical hour. And there's a reason for that urgency. The evidence is clear that in sepsis, delays cost lives. Every hour that treatment is held back, the risk rises. Measuring lactate early is part of catching sepsis inside that window, while there is still time to turn it around. Measure again later. It also tells the team whether the treatment's working. If lactate is coming down, that's a good sign. If it stays high, the fight isn't won yet. It's both an alarm and a scoreboard. I want to tell you why this particular test matters so much to me. When I developed sepsis, my treatment was delayed, not by minutes, but by 34 hours. 34 hours between when I should have been treated and when I actually was. By the time I was properly assessed, I was already in septic shock. My body was shutting down. The test that should have flagged how critically ill I was, the simple, fast, cheap checks, like the one I've described in this video, came too late to change the course of the first crucial hours for me. Somehow I survived, but not everyone does in that position. And I live every day with the delays that cost me, the damage that those lost hours left behind. That is why I make these videos. I'm not trying to frighten anyone, but because I genuinely believe if more people understand the simple things like lactate, what it means, why it has to be checked, then some of these delays might never happen. Some lives might be saved. That is the whole reason that I'm here and why I'm talking to you. So if you take just one thing away from this video, let it be this. Lactate is the quiet test that tells the truth. It does not make headlines. It's not on your smartwatch, but it can reveal faster than almost anything else when your body is in serious trouble. And here's the practical part. If you or someone you love is fighting an infection and getting worse, not better, but worse, you are allowed to ask. You can ask a simple question. Has lactate been checked? You do not need to be a doctor to ask for this. You do not need to know the numbers. You just need to know that that question exists, because asking, it could be the moment that gets someone the help that they need in the time that still matters. If this video has helped you understand sepsis even a little bit, please share it. You never know. It might just be something that helps someone. I'm Gary, and this has been Know Your Blood, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Look after yourselves and look after each other.